Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of Game 5 of the 2018 World Championship match between the champion Magnus Carlsen and his challenger Fabiano Caruana. We see here the handshake before Game 5 and we see already the move e2, e4 on the board. We know that the 13th world champion Garry Kasparov was famous for his grimaces at the board, but the 16th world champion can do them as well. Here are a few examples of Magnus Carlsen and his grimaces. Let's look at Game 5. Caruana was white, Carlsen was black. It was played on the 15th of November 2018. 1e4 as in Game 1 and 3. Caruana is sticking to this first move. c5, Carlsen is sticking to the Sicilian. And we are seeing the Rossolimo again for the third time in the match. g6, and now Caruana deviates. He castles. It's possible to get back in the setup from Game 1 and 3, but as we'll see, that won't happen. Bishop takes c6 was played in Game 1 and 3. After castles, Carlsen played Bishop g7, Rook e1, e5, and now look at this move. Caruana plays a gambit on move 6, b2 to b4, a pawn sacrifice. It was played a number of times before, for example by Etienne Bacrot, the French Grandmaster, against Alexander Grishuk in the Paris Grand Chess Tour 2018, but that was a rapid game. Playing it in a World Championship match is a different kettle of fish. Yasser Seirawan, Grandmaster from America, called this a stunning gambit. We see this type of wing gambit in several openings. What white wants to do is, by giving up a pawn, he wants to use his superior development to blast open the position. Carlsen said in a press conference after the game that this move was not new to him. He had seen it before. He probably had prepared it for this match. Carlsen took the pawn. Bishop b2. Attacking the e5 pawn now with two pieces. It's only defended by the bishop. a6. Hitting the bishop. And a3. Which Grandmaster Svidler called the most critical move in this position. It gets very complicated. A takes b5 and a takes b4. The rooks were swapped. These are exciting opening moves, but both players played quite quickly, so they were still in their preparation. Here c takes d4, it's much too greedy. White gets a good game after bishop takes e5, bishop takes and knight takes. These tripled pawns for black don't make a great impression. So after bishop takes a1, Carlsen played d6. Protecting the pawn on e5. Carlsen took on c5. And if you now take on c5, white again gets a good game by taking on e5. This is good for white. So after b takes c5, Carlsen played something else. He played knight e7. Peter Svidler said it looks like it could be quite dangerous for black, but it seems that Carlsen had prepared this line, and in fact the endgame turns out to be fine for black, as we'll see. But if you see this for the first time, it looks quite dangerous for black. Queen e2 played by Caruana, hitting the pawn on b5. b4, nice move. This pawn on b4 is now paralyzing the knight on b1. The knight has no squares. A pawn paralyzing a piece is always a good deal. So Caruana will have to solve that problem with his knight. Here queen b5 check seems like a logical move, but Grandmaster Svidler explained why Caruana played queen c4 instead. After queen b5 check, you have this variation, knight c6 interposing. Then white wants to play d4, pushing in the center, e takes, knight takes, and if black then castles, white can take on c6. But after b takes c6, both the queen and the bishop on a1 are hanging, and this is very awkward for white. Black is better here. After queen c4, the move played in the game, if we then get the same variation, knight c6, d4, e takes, knight takes, black castles, white takes on c6, b takes, and now white's queen is not hanging, so white has time for bishop takes, king takes, and then take on b4, and this is good for white. That's why Grandmaster Svidler thought that after b4, Caruana chose queen c4 instead of queen b5 check. After queen c4, Carlsen did not play knight c6, he played queen a5, and that game came as a surprise to all the teams of grandmasters that I followed watching this game. Grandmaster Cry, an American grandmaster, called this a madman's move, but that was a little tongue-in-cheek. The queen is now hitting the bishop, so white has to do something about that. d4 is a move that Caruana considered. He said in a press conference that this looked fun to play, although probably bad for white, and he decided on c takes d6 instead. If black now takes that bishop, then there is d takes e7, and this is winning for white, with black's king stuck in the center of the board. After c takes d6, Carlsen played bishop e6 as an in-between move, hitting the queen, queen c7, and taking on a1 is again not a very good idea. In this case it's checkmate on the spot. So after queen c7, Carlsen took the queen, and d takes c7. After 16 moves, white has a pawn on the 7th rank. Knight c6, it all looks very dangerous for black, but if you look at it a bit further, then you can see that this pawn still is keeping this knight at bay. It cannot play. Also this bishop on a1 is not a great piece, not covering much ground from a1, and also playing against the bishop pair in an open position is not very pleasant. So it turns out that this endgame is in fact fine for black. Maybe black is even a bit better. Caruana played c3, trying to get rid of that pawn on b4. King d7, the pawn is going to collect the runaway pawn on c7. C takes b4, rook a8, hitting the bishop, and now Caruana finds a nice way to activate his pieces. You really want to improve your worst piece, you want to play knight c3, but Caruana said in a press conference that he could not make it work. He said knight takes b4, rook b1, and the knight comes to d3, and Caruana said never anything seems to work out for white here. And that's why he did not play knight c3, he played bishop c3. Not a nice square for the bishop, standing on the square of the knight. The knight wants to go to c3, but it protects the b4 pawn, and we'll see how Caruana brings his knight into play anyway. Carlsen took the pawn. In one of the broadcasts, Grandmaster Kirilla was interviewed, who is on Caruana's team. He's one of Caruana's seconds. Kirilla said he wasn't happy with the outcome of the opening, but felt that Caruana should be able to hold this position against the angry bishop pair, as he called it. Caruana played d3. He desperately wants to bring his knight into play. Here b5 was looked at. Black fixes the weakness on the dark square, this pawn. He will then want to win that pawn, for example with bishop f8, attacking the pawn twice. And his ultimate idea is to get this pawn all the way to the b1 square. That's black's winning plan. But instead of b5, Carlsen played king b6, activating the king and also planning to block the b pawn with king b5. But it's not as precise as b7 b5 was because of white's next move. Bishop d2, a retreating move, with knight c3 coming, bishop e3 check coming. Grandmaster Ashley was convinced that Carlsen must have missed the retreating move, just as Caruana missed the retreating move in game 3, when he missed that Carlsen could retreat his rook from a5 back to a8. And he said these are the types of moves that top grandmasters sometimes miss. But in the press conference after the game, Carlsen said he had seen this bishop d2 maneuver. Very nice maneuver. He played rook d8, and now you can play knight c3, because black cannot take on b4, that would be a blunder, because of rook b1. The knight is pinned. If you play king a5, then there is knight d5. White is winning. If you go to c5 instead, then knight a4 check, and white is winning. So after rook d8, knight c3 can be played, but Caruana played bishop e3 check instead. If black plays knight d4, then knight c3 is coming, and white is fine. Carlsen played king b5 instead. Knight c3 check. Now we get a very forced variation. King takes pawn, knight d5 check, and bishop takes d5. White has successfully been able to not only develop his bad piece on b1, but is now even off the board. That problem has completely disappeared for him. E takes d5, rook takes d5, rook b1 check, king goes forward, and white takes on b7. Threatening to take on f7, So Carlsen played knight d8 to protect the f7 pawn, and black is going to win the d3 pawn and will be a pawn up. But the highest rated female player in the world, Ho Yifan, said about this position that she thought white would be the only one who could play for something, despite going a pawn down, as white's pieces are so much more active than black's. And yes, all three white pieces, rook, bishop and knight, are very nice, very active. Black's bishop and knight are in very passive positions. Rook c7 check from Caruana. Carlsen took, he's now a pawn up, but actually his king is in danger here. King f1 from Caruana. Peter Svidler explained here that black has to be careful. He cannot allow white to play g4, which takes the f5 square away, as white then has a threat of knight e1 check, and if the king then goes to e4, then there is rook c4 winning material, as black then will have to interpose the rook. Hope you can follow my arrows. Black really has to be careful. You cannot play rook a5 to try something on the bottom rank, because you'll lose a piece in one move with rook d7 check, picking up the knight. Another thing you cannot do is push the pawn, because then there is a very embarrassing knight e1 checkmate in the position. Very nice checkmate, by the way. So after king f1, the threat is g4. Carlsen recognized that and played h5. Caruana renewed the threat with h3, threatening g4 again. Carlsen played king e4, making a run for it with his king to safety, giving back the pawn. Wants to run with his king back to e6, and there it will be safe. Knight g5 check from Caruana, king f5, and white can still try f3, and then black should not play f6, because there is another checkmate on the board. g4 check, h takes, and checkmate. After f3, the best move to play is h4 to deal with the g4 threat, because you can take that en passant. After king f5, Caruana did not try f3, he took on f7, knight takes, rook takes check, and bishop f6, and after g2, g4 check, Caruana offered a draw, and it was accepted by Carlsen. The game can continue. h takes check, king e6, and rook a7, and this is a totally equal position. A very exciting start to this game, but it was probably home preparation from both players, and it petered out to a draw. Here we see the handshake after g2, g4 check, and both players went to the press conference. We have 5 draws in the table, 2.5, 2.5, with 7 games to go. Carlsen said, "I was happy about the opening. After it calmed down, I felt only black could be better, but I could not find a way to get an advantage. The opening was a great success for me. I feel I've done reasonably well in the opening so far with black. If there is a way at all to play for an advantage, the path is very, very narrow. I'm looking forward to my 2 white games. I'm happy with how things are going with black. There's considerable room for improvement in my white games." And yes, Carlsen will be white in games 6 and 7. Caruana said, "This line is really interesting, and if black is cooperative, it can get very exciting. The position after queen c4 is new, had not been played before. I never thought I was worse. We've both played correctly, so I cannot be disappointed. I did not play differently today, having 2 black games coming up." Game 6 will be played on Friday the 16th of November, and I will be here after the game to tell you what happened. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you like the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.